What's up, everybody? Steve here. I've got a special guest for you guys. His name is Zach Ginn, and his YouTube channel is Flip with Rick. Rick is his father. We're just going to dive right into this and talk about two of Zach's largest deals that he's had, both wholesaling and wholetailing. So I want to talk about both of those in detail, how much you made, and how you guys actually structured those deals.
I can't wait to tell you, man. This is a fun one. My name's Zach Ginn, guys. So I do have a YouTube channel, Flip with Rick, but really I just wanted to share with some things a lot of real estate investors don't know. I think a lot of people take the regular route with real estate investing. I buy a house on the MLS, I rent it out, or I do a flip, and I kind of changed the game on it, and I can't wait to share.
That's cool. So your first deal, or not your first deal, but one of your larger deals, it was a wholesale deal, and you guys made 50,000 bucks on it.
Yep.
So walk us through that from beginning to end. So first off, how did you find the prospective property and the seller, and then how did you structure that deal to end up with a $50,000 spread?
Okay. I just want to preference this to the audience here because a lot of people might not know what I do and it might just seem very confusing. So I just want to share a little bit about what wholesaling is really quick.
Yeah.
Wholesaling, if you don't know, wholesaling is legal here in the state of Florida. Basically anywhere, Illinois, there's some laws, you got to be a realtor in there. But overall, what I basically do, summed up since I was 17 years old, is I go meet a person who wants to sell the property for cash. They don't want to use a realtor for some reason. Maybe they need to sell it within a couple of weeks. Maybe there's a pre-foreclosure going on, and they just want to get rid of the house for cash, kind of like a used car dealership, the closest thing I could really relate it to.
Yeah.
What I do is I go meet them, meet the seller, I talk to them, and we both agree on a price for a piece of property, and I usually just write up contract. Usually do like a $50 earnest deposit money on it, put the property under contract with them. What I do is I find a buyer who's willing to buy it for cash. We call them cash buyers. Usually those are more or less, slumlords, people trying to actually flip properties, HGTV guys, or they're just looking for rentals. What I do is I bring them into the property. The seller is there, but I just show them around the house. And let's say I put that property under contract for 100,000. I find this buyer and he says, Zach, I'll pay you 110, $120,000 for it. What I do is this is called I do an assignment of contract, which I literally just sell that contract to that buyer, and they give me about $20,000 at closing. Boom, made $20,000 and repeat. It's the only business I know for a 17-year-old kid in high school to make over 10 grand a month. And it's not a scam. It's not a big guru Lambo thing. I never say that. There's guys out there that do it, but it's a legitimate business.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And we've done them as well, and I can vouch for that. It is you are selling the contract. And also to clarify, because I think that there's a lot of confusion, you don't close on the property. So in a wholesaling situation, you're assigning that contract, and then that new buyer, that end user, or that investor closes on the contract and is responsible for their own fees. And there's essentially no fees taken out of your assignment spread, correct?
That is correct. Again, you're a broker, so you know this a lot more than the audience maybe, but you can do a double close technically. But really, no, I don't buy them. Now, fast forward, we buy all of our properties, and the way we do it is we do a wholesale deal, and we can't go forward with it. I'll just buy it for cash and put it on the market. But yeah, that's technically what it is. Again, just like real estate in general, there's a lot of, how could I say, unethical people out there that do wholesaling that, they go after 80-year-old ladies and they try to get properties under contract for crazy low prices. And that is unethical, borderline illegal. I don't do any of that. I don't condone that. There's realtors that sometimes do the same thing with listings. Again, those are unethical people. I'm not talking about any of that in real estate.
Yep. So, and I know a handful of the groups that are out here that do a lot of them as well. And we've even done double assignments with these groups because there is enough spread in there as well. But I think something that's pretty important is if somebody does get into this business, that I come in contact with other wannabe investors, is they don't have those cash buyers at the very end. And that's where I think a lot of people get in trouble, because if you are going to do this, you have to perform, and you have to have that person at the very end, and not just one person. You need to build up that book of business of people that are going to actually exercise and get the deal done. And if you don't, you're really just hurting people. Am I right?
That's 100% right. So Steve is a real estate investor also. He buys properties looking for Airbnbs. I have maybe 100 like quote unquote Steves in my list that I have in my contacts that I've just been networking forever. Another way I find these people is you can actually find public records of cash transactions in your area. I usually go call them, email them, say, hey, I got properties. Are you interested? But that's the way I usually like to find them. But you got to find guys like Steve that like they have money, they love investing in real estate, and they're willing to buy a property with some of the, going through a property themselves, not dealing with a realtor, just for a cash discount.
Yep. Now let's talk about that actual deal where you made 50 grand on it. I assume the property was not $100,000 property, but maybe a little bit higher in price, or how did you guys structure that deal?
Okay, so this deal was a probate transaction. So this $50,000 one, it's a little crazy story, but basically the way my marketing works is crazy. Like I do a lot of marketing channels, but for this specific transaction, I'm gonna make it as simple as I can. So I'm in Florida, which you live in Florida. That is quote unquote, in my opinion, it's God's waiting room. A lot of people say that. There's a lot of older people here. So a lot of the kids of the older people live out of state. So what I do is, God forbid somebody passes away in Florida, they're 95 years old and they own a property free and clear. What I do is once that person passes away, I will give a letter to the actual heirs of the property. It's a little complicated to do, but that's what I did. I sent a letter to the heirs of the property. These heirs lived in Colorado and they didn't want to deal with this property. It was around probably worth $200,000, I would say. 220, I guess, if you put it on the market, but 200,000, let's just say for clean numbers. And I just sent them a letter, said, hey, I'm looking to buy some properties cash. I'm really sorry for your loss. If there's anything I can do, I'm looking for some more properties. If there's any way that you're possibly even open to selling it, I'd love to get in reach with you. And then I had to put my phone number there. And what they did is they call me, hey, I really don't want to deal with this property. Like I live in Colorado, I work full time. Like what's the point of me going over here and like just going there full time and just fixing up the property and put it on the market? It needs a lot of work. It's too far. And honestly, to them, it wasn't worth their time. They're pretty good high net worth individuals. So basically they said, what can you do? And I said, I can actually buy it without you moving, without going anywhere. I know it's a lot of work. So the person was older. They died of lung cancer because they smoked like 4 packs of cigarettes a day in the house, and they knew how bad it was, and they just didn't want to deal with it. They're like, I don't want to deal with this house. So I went there. I offered them. I got access to the property because they had a property manager there, and I just went inside the house. I looked at it. They let me put a lockbox on it, and it was a mess. It was smoked 4 packs of cigarettes in the house. It's gonna be disgusting. And I go through there, and I asked them. I say, hey, this is a lot of work. The roof's leaking. There's cigarette smells everywhere. The AC, like it's 10 grand in Florida just to clean out a house that bad in smoke. So what I did was I just offered them over the phone, hey, can I buy your house for $130,000? It needs a lot of work. That's really where I'm at. I'm just not comfortable buying a house because it needs all this work. And they said, you've been really transparent with me for the whole process. How fast can you close? I said, probably in about 3 weeks. And they're like, I just don't want to deal with this anymore. So that's what I did. So 130,000, they countered me at 140. I met at 135 and I put a cash buyer through there and sold it for about 185,000, made $50,000 and signed it pretty clean and easy. Cost me about $1 to send the letter.
Beautiful. And I do want to touch on this too, because I think, and you did touch on this a little bit as well, that there's preconceived notions of taking advantage of people and everything else. And being a real estate broker in Florida, as well as an investor since, early 2000s, I can tell you from my own personal experiences, in many cases, you're helping these people out. They are okay. They understand that maybe they're not making as much money, but it is their time associated with it. And also, especially in a probate situation, you have family members that they're hurt, they're in pain, and they don't even want to have the pain of going back to that property. And we do see that a lot in Florida, and that's basically just lines up with what that deal was. Is a lot of people just don't want to see that property. They just want to put it past them and put it behind them because they're disgruntled and they're upset and they're sad, and it's easier just to have somebody like yourself come in and make that purchase. So I do want to make sure that people do understand. And if anybody is interested in doing something like this, yeah, it's like you are searching for a good deal, but it's not taking advantage of people, because a lot of times these properties do need a lot of work, and they do need a lot of money, and they do need a lot of time put into them. You know, having flipped, you know, a bunch of properties myself, you know, it's work. There's no doubt about it. You don't just get a house and then there's no work to be done. But even you locking a property up and assigning it out and making a $50,000 spread, that's fantastic. And that's one of your largest for a wholesale deal. But how many sellers did you have to work with before you even get to the one deal that makes sense?
Oh yeah.
The point is, it's a lot of work that goes into getting these deals.
It definitely. I mean, some of the deals make $5,000 in, and you know what? I'm happy with it. And some hit like 50. So it's just the push and pull. But that's really the big deals I get. Some of the big deals I did this year, basically due to COVID, people didn't want to risk their property going down 50%. Where I'm at, Port St. Lucie, Florida, property value has been down 50% because 70% of all houses were rentals. So it just dropped like crazy back in 2006, 7. So some of my deals I did now, the renters, they're like, I'm scared this thing's gonna go down 50%. I put it on the market, I gotta sell it like in a month. That's what I'm really dealing with around here too.
Yeah, yeah, nice. All right, so wholetailing, and you made your largest deal on this to date was an $80,000, but with wholetailing, you're closing on the property, you're doing minimal, if not any work, and then just relisting the property to open market or to your database of investors, correct?
Correct. So my largest wholesale deal was $80,000. It was not sexy at all. It was a complete mess. So basically, this was when I was cold calling back in the day. This was when I graduated college. I was still kind of cold calling more or less. But basically what I did was I cold called a seller, someone that was on my list. Usually the certain lists I hit, someone that has a lot of equity in their property. They may have owned it for a while, and maybe they have a trigger. So either they're on a code violations list, maybe they're on a tax delinquency list, maybe they're behind on their taxes. It's pre-COVID. But so basically this person had a high equity. They had a lot of equity on the property. They've owned it for a while. And also they were about $9,000. They owed $9,000 due to code violations on the property, which is when the code enforcement puts, sort of a lien on the property saying, hey, you owe us $100 per day until you get this fixed. Now that one is because of high grass, the pool's cracked and drained, and the roof was bad, and there was environmental concerns inside the house. It was a complete mess of a property. But it was so nutty. So basically the it's crazy to think about this story, but basically the guy, he didn't take care of the property. He was on his 7th DUI, I believe, in the state of Florida. So the state of Florida is really nice. Once you get one DUI, they're like, that's not good, but keep going. Not in jail. 3rd, 4th. He had a 6th DUI until they literally said, you know what, like, you're going to jail. So he was going away for about 3-4 years. He basically told me, he said, Zach, I'm not going to jail. I'm not going to jail. Like, they don't even like stop bothering me with this. I want to sell this house, but I'm going to beat this case. I'm not going to jail. And he just kept pushing it until basically I got a call from the guy saying, hey, I'm going to jail in like 30 days. I got to sell this house for like 5 years. I was like, oh boy.
Wow.
So I go to the house. It's a complete mess, like 6 DUIs. The guy's not taking care of the house. So complete mess. Don't want to call him a drunk. He seems mean. But kind of was. And basically I said, hey, this property is a complete mess. I got to buy this thing in under 30 days. Like I can't do much inspections because every time I go here, like you're not here. It was a really risky deal for me. And I literally bought it at, I think like 100 grand. And the way it worked, it was like 100 grand, and he had to live in the house for like 7 days after I closed, just because the way that worked with his going to jail. So he had to sell all of his possessions in 30 days. It was like I couldn't go there anymore because I was selling everything out. So he had there, he had a bunch of crackhead friends everywhere, but it was a good deal. Trust me, 100 grand. It's like a $250,000 house, like FHA clean. So what I did was basically we bought the house. After 7 days, I basically called the guy and I said, hey, are you out of the house? Like I'm ready to go work on it. He said, yep. He said, yeah, I moved out of the house. You can go deal with it, because he was going to jail like a day or two after. And I said, awesome. So I go by the house. I drive in there, and the guy's in the garage. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? There's like couch and a bed in the garage. I'm like, dude, you got to get out of here. Like I gave you 7 days. He's like, Zach, I moved out of the house. I moved in the garage.
Wow.
Like, what's the problem? And I'm like, oh my gosh. So definitely had to work with him a couple more days. And what he did was I met him on the last day where he had to move out because he had like a day or two left. He still had his Monte Carlo. He didn't sell. And basically said, hey man, like I got to get going on this thing. And he's like, yeah, I'm moving out. He put all of his valuables in the back of his truck, and he took his keys and he drove away, which was the craziest thing I've ever heard, because he was on the 7th DUI and he just drove away. And it was a complete mess, but he left. He's probably still in prison right now. But we basically put 3 grand into the house, just cleaning what I had to get done. The pool's a mess. The roof was bearable. Had to do some kills everywhere, and just had to basically replace some flooring. Spent about 3 grand in a little rehab and put it on the market. Sold to a cash buyer, and they basically bought it for, I think, 190-ish, and they, then they flipped it, sold it for like 245 or something like that. But everyone made money in the transaction. And long story, but I thought it was a funny one. So that's what made 80K.
That's an interesting story for sure. So when you, with these that you actually close on, do you just send those to your database first, see if there's anybody that wants to buy it, or do you go to open market with these properties? How do you resell them?
So the way I look at real estate investing is pretty interesting. So the way I look at it is, hey, I put a property under contract, $100,000. What can I do to make the most money on this, especially here in the state of Florida? So back in the day, I had no money, so I had to use a cash buyer. But now I've made a pretty good amount of money. I can just buy these houses all cash. So I look at 100,000. I could sell it to a guy who's going to probably try to flip it, and he's going to make money. Sell it to him for $20,000 and make $20,000. It's good. But if I had a house for 100,000 and it needed no work, why don't I sell that to a conventional loan to a person who's actually going to buy the house, like live in that property? It's an end buyer. So it's a higher quality of buyer, which means they'll actually live in the property. And I don't have a list of people that are looking to buy with a conventional loan that got their financing that's just ready to buy. Only the real cash buyer investors. So if I put it on the market and I just sell it to someone with a conventional, I can make 35 to 40,000. So I had that realization about a couple of years ago, and Rick's got the funds for it. And so that's basically 90% of all of our deals we do. If they're really risky, I say if the pool's leaking and the roof's completely shot and it won't pass the conventional loan, I just sell it to a cash buyer. But most of the time I just throw it on the market.
Nice. Very cool. So if somebody's interested in getting into this, what tips do you have for them? And also, what kind of tools and software are you personally using if you're open to disclosing what you're doing?
Yeah. So the way I do it is I do have MLS access, but not personally me. I'm not a realtor. The one thing I can tell you is if you are a licensed realtor, the way you do marketing has to be completely different. I could be a licensed realtor if I wanted to. The issue is if I set a piece of mail out, I have to disclose I'm a realtor.
Yep.
I put those We Buy Houses signs everywhere, which I used to do. I'd have to put my name and me being a realtor, my license number, and then code enforcement says $5 a sign. So it's a little messy. But basically, if you want to be in this business, you can be a realtor. It's a little tougher, but overall, if you want to be in this business, the one thing I can tell you is you just got to do action and just get started. It takes 10,000 hours in basically anything to be an expert and actually make a full-time living. To make $100,000 in this business, I say you automatically got to put your 10,000 hours in. I put it in. You've definitely put it in. Once you get that experience, it's lights out from there. So just talking to people, building good rapport, being a good salesman, that's the 10,000 hours is what I recommend. The software I do use is, I do use the MLS because Rick owns a brokerage, and I have access to realtors everywhere. But I use PropStream, which is, you go to listrei.com if you want to go there, but it's basically the MLS, but you can also pull data from there. So somewhere in your zip code or city that owns a lot of high equity, you can pull properties that actually went through probates. You can actually target people that are going through a divorce. You can actually mail something to them. Crazy amount. Batchleads.io/Zach's, the other website I use. That's where I just send text messages to sellers. I'm seeing if they're open to selling the property. But overall, it's a fun business. I think you can be a realtor and a wholesale at the same time. I think you could probably make the same amount of money doing both. In my niche, I like the wholesaling part. If you do high-end luxury real estate, could probably be even better. But overall, it's a fun business. I love to help people with it, and it's a good way to make some money and help people out.
Nice, man. And lastly, what age were you when you did your first deal?
17 years old.
Well, I assume you had to run it through your dad?
No. Well, okay. So the way that worked was my dad's been doing it for about 18 years, wholesaling. So he's pretty good. He's probably the top guy in his field. And I basically told him at the age of 17, I was a bag boy. I said, "Hey, Dad, can you teach me how to do this?" And he said, "No. If you want it bad enough, just do it yourself." And the way he gave me some tough love there, but it was true. If he just gave me everything, I probably wouldn't be where I'm at today.
Yeah.
So I learned from scratch. I basically did my first 100,000 in high school by myself. And I went to college, did wholesaling over the phone virtually, which is I can go for hours on that. And I basically came home, started wholesaling by myself, and I started doing pretty well. My dad's like, "Hey, you got to partner up with me. We're cannibalizing each other." So that's kind of how we came together on this with Flip with Rick. But yeah, he helped me a lot. But
so you made over 100. You made over 100 grand while you're in high school.
Correct.
I love it.
Well, I was taking full-time college classes, like dual enrollment, so it was a little easier for me. But yeah.
And I'm assuming this is full-time, with exception to some of your online ventures and YouTube and everything.
Oh yeah. This thing's full-time for me. It has to be. I'm a real estate investor first, YouTuber second.
Yeah, and that is important. Focus in on your niche, whatever it may be, and be a success in it, and do it until successful. So cool, man. I appreciate your time today. So where can people find you?
At Flip with Rick on YouTube. Just try to help people out in the business, and that's it.
Yeah, if you guys want more videos on wholesaling, wholetailing, and a lot of other stuff in terms of real estate investing, make sure you go to his YouTube channel. I'll put a link down below as well. And some of the properties, he's got really cool videos up. You'll be able to actually walk through a lot of the properties as well and see how he actually basically interacted with the prospective sellers and how he got the deals done. So I highly encourage you guys to check out their channel and just Flip with Rick over on YouTube, and we'll put a link down below. Zach, I appreciate it, man. Thank you very much for being on today.
Thanks, man. Thank you so much.
Thanks.